Today I'm going to be going through the directions how I made this sap bucket look so grungy. It is a Roycycled paper. It is the farmhouse blocks, and this is an old sap bucket. We've used paint, we've used some salt wash, and we are going to get started. The first thing we did is wash the bucket really well, put a coat of primer paint on it, and once the primer dried, we put a coat of Antique Villa chalk synthesis paint on, and we were ready to start our project. This is all ready. We've got it propped up here, and what I'm going to do is I'd like to get a little more trimming. I've cut this one out, but I'd like it to be trimmed a little bit more around the edges. So I'm going to do that by the water method. Of course, I got water where I don't want it, so we don't want to let that get. So the water method gives me kind of a more of a jagged edge, but also I can get into some of these little crevices here without having a really sharp edge. And I'll show you what it does. So we rub water where we want it to be with just a paintbrush. It softens the paper enough that, well, it didn't soften it enough right there. It softens it enough usually so that we can then rip it carefully and we can get rid of the excess paper that we don't want. So I'm going to start from this end and see if I can get a little bit more of this. It's kind of like a wreath, so a wreath is going to be a little more difficult than something that's straight. But I really want to get that design. So just going to hold my finger where I don't want it to rip and let the rest rip. So I'm calling this a farmhouse bucket. These sap buckets, they're still pretty easy for me to find here in Vermont. So we've got some varnish. I'm using my Roycycled varnish, and I have that ready to. I'm going to pour some in this little plate here. First thing we're going to do is get this chicken down. So I am going to start in the middle. And I am going to put my varnish down. And this is a matte varnish, and we'll use it to decoupage down, but we'll also use it to do the sealing of the top of it. Okay, that looks like quite just enough product. All right, let's make sure we've got that where we want it. Nice and straight. And I am going to push it down in the middle. And then just keep pushing it a little bit at a time. Make sure I have enough product there. I don't want bubbles, so you get sometimes just a little bit of bubbles because you're stretching the paper. It's pretty thin paper and it's pretty easy to stretch it. So I am pushing this all these edges down, getting out the wrinkles. Okay, so now I am going to pull this back. Let's see where I did. I am going to start and get my varnish on this side. It's not a very big piece of paper, so make sure we have it overlapped enough. And these buckets also are not smooth. They have divots and stuff in them. Okay, so here we got that pushed over. And again, I am pushing it down just a little at a time so that I can get all the wrinkles out as I'm going along. I also like the typography that was up at the top, but I want to make sure that it fits on the page. So what I am going to do is this I can cut, because I want to save this little bit of red and white stripe, and you'll see why. Okay, so now we are going to put some Decoupage medium. Let's move our project. We are going to put this right here at the very bottom. It's kind of big divots down here where this can probably got knocked around a lot. I'm not sure how old these cans are, but I'm sure they're probably from 1960s. This one is kind of cool. It doesn't have any seams in it. Usually they all have seams in them. Okay, put that there. Make sure that I can get my letters all the way over and they still stay on the bucket. We are sealed in, and we're going to do a faux paint treatment along the sides here to kind of make it look like this bucket is the same color as the backing here. And we need to move this piece over. Our stripe is not super happy, but we'll cover that up. We'll definitely do something with it. That's the nice thing. Decoupage is the first step, and then we'll do some paint techniques. So here we are with our bucket, and we are going to mix up some paint with some salt wash so we get some texture. We're pulling this color, which is very similar to our gray linen, and we are going to pull it all around the bucket. It's going to have some salt wash in it, and then eventually we are going to put another coat of paint and sand back to the salt wash. Tricky is getting the paint and the salt wash all along in these, by where the tissue is. So let's mix that up. So this is here's my container for my salt wash. Here's my salt wash. And I have, like I said, some gray linen paint. So I am just gonna pop that in here, just a little bit, because I don't want a ton. And my paint has a bunch of little particles in it, but I am not gonna worry about it right now. And maybe a scoop of salt wash. All right, so I think I've got it. It's pretty thick. And I'm gonna start stippling on it on my bucket. Now, the trick about salt wash is we're gonna put some on this bucket all as far around as we possibly can. I'm not putting any right here because I already like the texture of this paper. But then after this gloppy one dries, we are gonna go over it with probably a white, and then we're gonna sand back to the salt wash, and that will give us that very textured look. All right, so you see that? I don't want so much that, usually I use a bigger brush, but for this, I'm just using this small brush because I want to get all along in these little small spaces without getting too much on the decoupage tissue paper, which I've already sealed, by the way. So this is not a super thick salt wash mixture. It's kind of like just gonna add enough texture to make it look old. So it's quite a process to do all this stippling because I'm using such a small little brush. Final paint finish for this bucket was to just put another coat of paint on, and for this paint we also used the chalk synthesis paint, and we used a color called sea salt. It's a soft gray, and we were going to go ahead and paint the whole bucket and let it dry and then sand back to the little bit of particles of the salt wash mixed in with the gray linen paint. Here's our finished bucket. We sanded back the paint a little bit to give you that layered look, and then we put a top coat over the whole thing. It looks like a layered upon layered old farmhouse bucket.